So folks, news out of that there US of A, that PAULA ABDUL has filed 2 lawsuits against Nigel Lythgoe. Nigel's the big producer, or was the big producer, on American Idol. I think he still is. He's also done, what's it called in America? The dance one that young lady did there. What's it called? So You Think You Can Dance with Cat Deal. He's also done that one. And I think he did he do Pop Idol over here? I think he did before he went over the pond there and done very, very well for himself. Says he's reputedly worth about 120 million, possibly even more. Anyway, Paul has said he did a couple of things to her, forced himself on her about 20 odd years ago, and tried again about 15 or so years ago. Anyway, she's just filed lawsuits in the US of A against him, and she said also he tried to offer a bit of unwanted slap and tickle to an assistant of hers called April. She said she actually noted that, and April hasn't come forward ever before, and neither had Paula until this week. Nigel's friends say he wouldn't have done it at all. He flirts, that's all he does. He's a nice fella. He'll be beside himself with it, and he will vigorously defend himself. I, for one, hope he's not done anything, because I've always quite liked him, to be honest with you. Another guy who calls a spade, and obviously got a hell of a lot of talent, because he's been behind some monstrous shows. I mean, American Idol, for the first, say, 18 of its first 20 years, I was an avid watcher, and it's a show I love greatly. And I've got a lot of favourites that came from there, a lot of singers that I think the world of, that came from that format. So I thought Nigel did a great job. Paula Abdul I've never so much been a fan of as a singer and performer, or even as a panellist on there. That doesn't mean to say it didn't happen. I honestly don't know. And I would suggest if it did, she needed to come forward, and she's been very brave doing it. But I'm not so sure. I mean, I read one of the reports saying she was going to come forward years ago, but she thought she might lose a gig on the panel because he was behind the show when he'd have got rid of her. Well, I would have thought if you've been sexually assaulted, Polly, you come forward whether or not. Because if you have in this day and age, you get lots of dosh from the person you'd accuse anyway. You might even get a Prince Andrew where it doesn't even go to court, and you might get a good payoff anyway. So there's ways and means of getting a few quid back, so I wouldn't have been worried about the losing the slot on there. And what I found even stranger is she went working on the So You Think You Can Dance programme, again with Nigel Lythgoe, further down the line. I would have thought if she'd been sexually assaulted while on American Idol, the last thing she would want to do was go and work with him again. But then again, what do I know? But no, I always quite like Nigel. I mean, it says, I read about it today, he's been out with Raquel Welch, who's recently died. Obviously, I'm not saying he's pushed her into any death or whatever, but she's recently died. And somebody else very well known, I can't think of, another beauty. He's going with an actress now, he's about 74, he's Nigel. I think he's going out with a 54-year-old, so he's doing all right for himself, there's no doubt about that. But no, I always thought he was a decent fellow. Hey, you never know, just shows you never know. It might be like the Russell Brand saga and the Wooten and all that. There might be more coming forward if there is. I don't know. I would have thought it wouldn't have happened, and I don't know why I would have thought that. The fly in the ointment is old Miss Abdul mentioning April, this assistant. If she's seen him do something to somebody else that was unwarranted, and this girl comes forward, well then it might get that bit stickier for Nigel, because if you get more than one person saying shenanigans have taken place, especially when they've not been wanted and not been asked for, then it looks worse for you. So we'll see. No doubt we'll learn more in the coming days, weeks and months.